Bueno, buenos días. Seguimos sin interrupción con la siguiente mesa porque intentaremos que el retraso no se prolongue demasiado. Bueno, y para hacer una brevísima introducción a esta mesa, yo soy el doctor Gómez Barrena de La Paz y estoy con el doctor Jesús Campos de Puerta de Hierro y tenemos el privilegio, yo creo, de presentar una mesa de componente femoral que sigue siendo pues un problema o por lo menos un punto de discusión y de debate muy interesante. Y hay ponentes de gran calidad en esta mesa y, bueno, entre los dos presentaremos y organizaremos la discusión, si le parece bien al doctor Campos. Entonces, para no dilatarnos, empezará el doctor Gehrke, que es bien conocido, discutiendo sobre la opción cementación, no cementación y con datos de registros. Doctor Gehrke, cuando quiera.
Muchas gracias. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Calvo and Miguel Angel for inviting me to this very interesting meeting here. Before I start, I'd like to, doesn't work? Here are my disclosures. Before I start, I'd like to show you shortly where I'm coming from. I'm coming from Hamburg, which is located in the northern part of Germany. It's the second largest city in Germany, and our capital, Berlin, is about 300 kilometers away. It's a quite funny slide here because the screenshot shows Switzerland in the position of Czech, to be honest. But it's they are not the only ones, the Americans here from Latin America, where they put Argentina into Colombia. Hamburg is, as I mentioned, second largest city in Germany. 2 million people are living there. It's dominated by a big harbor and a river. But probably it's more well known because of its red light district, because in Germany we have the second largest red light district in Europe. Biggest one is in Amsterdam. And here is the location of the Endoclinic, which is quite interesting because it's located very close to the harbor on the one side and very close to the red light district on the other side, which is in the opposite of the OR. Here's our OR. We have a big OR where we have 4 tables in one room, and there we are performing a lot of surgeries. Last year we did about 8,000. But as you can see here, from our 2,600 primary total hip replacement, we still do 800. That means 1/3 in a cemented manner. Does it work? If you look at the historical papers from John Callaghan, after 30 years, 88%, or here from Dan Barry, after 25 years, more than 80% survival rate, it's not bad. Here, for example, a patient in our hospital, she received both implants in 1978, which is now 40 years ago, and she is still pain-free and shows no signs of loosening. There's, of course, worldwide a big divide about cemented fixation. So, for example, in Scandinavia, in Sweden, they do still in about 75% cemented implants, and only in 25% of their implants cementless implants. Interestingly, in this cemented country, Sweden, the revision burden that means how many revisions of 100 joint replacements are in your hospital or in your country? Just 8%. In the more uncemented dominated countries, the United States, the revision burden is about 18%. You can make your own conclusions about this. If we look at the NARA, this is a Nordic or the Scandinavian registry, the combination of all the Scandinavian registries with more than 530,000 patients. The cemented did a bit better than the uncemented, mainly because of the significantly higher rate of periprosthetic fractions and dislocations for the uncemented implants. The question is, for whom are cemented stems at least make sense? There's a great paper from Henrik Malkau and Eric Malkau where they were talking about the uncemented paradox. That means that the trend is paradoxic given that registry data, which represent nationwide total hip arthroplasty outcomes, suggests that cemented fixation in patients older than 75 years give much better results. And not only over 75 years, if you go into the registries a little bit more intense, there is, even in the age of 55 or even under 55, no difference between the outcome of uncemented and cemented stems. The same here, 65 to 74 years, latest Norwegian registry. The only difference here is in patients over 75 years. Hazard ratio is about 1.5 bigger. In Australia, majority of the surgeons, they are going for uncemented implantation. But still, almost 50% of the stems are cemented. And in Australia, we can see also, in patients over 75, the outcome of the cemented stems are significantly better, as you can see here, for example, in this graph. The only one which is better than the cemented over 75 years is the hybrid system, but we come later back on it. That leads to the fact that, for example, in Sweden, majority of the surgeons are implanting cemented stems in patients over 70 years. And again, the NARA shows you that there is no difference in patients less than 50 years and slightly better outcome in patients up to 70 years and then much better outcome. What about the young patients? There's an interesting study from Exeter where they reported in patients less than 50 years, younger than 50 years, stem survival after 17 years of 100%. And if you go here in the Australian registry, there is no difference in the younger group and the older group. In Finland, the registry shows us that the cemented groups in patients less than 55 years give much better results than in the cement-less groups. And that leads to the fact that in UK, for example, and you can read it in the latest National Joint Registry, the number of uncemented stems is decreasing, the number of hybrid stems is increasing, and cemented stems almost the same. So, the conclusion after 820,000 joint replacement in the UK registry was that cemented fixation gives the lowest implant revision rate at 10 years in all age bands and both genders. And I like to remind you, this patient, after 40 years now, she was just 30 years old when she received both implants. But the well-cemented stems works for everybody if you use a perfect cementing technique. This was already mentioned by Sir John Charnley 40 years ago. This was the old technique. Professor Buchholz, the founder of our hospital, the implantation technique 40 years ago was like this. This has nothing to do, of course, with the modern cementing techniques today. The modern cementing techniques include the proximal seal, usage of pulsatile jet lavage, and the cement plug, because we need cement penetration into the cancellous bone. And for this, we have three major goals. Dry, bloodless surface that you can reach by irrigation, usage of irrigation jet lavage systems to wash out all the debris, the blood and the fat out of the cancellous bone, and then you have the opportunity to have a very good interdigitization of the bone cement into the bone. Here, the comparison in this study from Broich, the difference with jet lavage and just with manual irrigation. Hypotension anesthesia is always a problem. I'm absolutely sure here in Spain you have the same situation. You have the anesthesists are completely uncontrolled. So this is more a wish than everything else. And we need high local pressure. We need some kind of pressurization. This is very, very important to press the bone cement into the cancellous bone and get a good interdigitization. Because we need a good interdigitization, especially in the zone 1, according to Lee and Shanley, because we know if we find a radiolucency zone there in the zone 1, right after the surgery, the loosening rate is going to be 40 times higher. We need a distal cement plug, of course, because this provides a good pressurization technique, sustained implantation of the bone cement. And that leads to the fact that in the endoclinic, we have a quite clear and quite simple philosophy. Less than 55 years, our patients get an uncemented implant. Older than 75 years, we use exclusively, I could say, the hybrid system. That means a cemented stem and cementless cups. And this is according to the results of the NGA, which showed also that they have the lowest failure rates in this age. So my take-home message is modern cementing technique is mandatory. Most important steps are lavage and pressurization. In patients older than 75 years, and this is proven by every registry in the world, the cemented stem is a better option, and the cemented stems or the cemented implants has a significantly lower fracture and dislocation rate, especially in older patients. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.